we need to talk about the New York Times 100 Best Books of the 21st Century list that came out recently. If you haven't heard of this list, it has been all the buzz in the past couple of weeks in the book community, and I want to talk about it. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome for the first time. I'm Valerie Geary. I am a writer, an avid reader, and on my channel, we talk a lot about books, about reading them, about writing them, about our strong feelings toward them. If you're a book lover, you found yourself in the right place. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, so let's talk about this list. I guess that the New York Times asked a bunch of other writers what their favorite books were of the past 24 years, and based on that information, on that kind of survey that they took, they compiled a list of the 100 best books of the 21st century. My first thought is, we still have a long way to go before the 21st century is over, right? 2024, we still have 75 years left, and we're already counting down the best books? That's it. Stop the presses. Writers, don't write any more books. We don't want them. We already have the 100 best. We don't need any more books. At this point, I mean, 100 books is gonna take us, like 10 years to read if the average person reads 10 books a year, and the average person is not reading 10 books a year. Those of you who are here with me probably can get through 100 books in a year or two, but most people, I know, read 12 books or less a year. So this is gonna take a while for people to get through them. Also, when I was going through this list, there's a lot of big books on this list, a lot of chunksters. Even me, somebody who reads 60 to 80 books a year, is going to need a little bit longer to get through some of these. So I guess writers, it's time to find ourselves a new job. Okay, but in all seriousness, I love this list. It has started a lot of conversations, a lot of chatter out in the bookish world, and I think that anytime people are talking about literature, that is a good thing. That is a positive thing, especially I feel like in today's kind of emotionally fraught society, books can be a good way to connect. They can be a good way to discover empathy and to walk in another person's skin for a while. So I say, hey, the more books, the better. I did notice a couple of trends, and I think a lot of people have talked about this as well, but this list seemed to... Oh, we got Charlie coming in. He's peeking his nose around. He says, let me into the video. Come on. Charlie wants in on the bookish conversation. Hi, bud. Okay, settle in. All right, what were we talking about? The trends. So I am not the first person to notice this, but the trend of this list seems to be very heavy on literary fiction. There was some translations, some poetry, some nonfiction, but a lot of it is literary fiction. Very dense, heavy prose, well-researched, heavily drawn characterization. I do have to admit that I have not read a lot of these books. We'll get to that in a minute. I was surprised by some of the books that weren't on this list. Books like All the Light We Cannot See, A Gentleman in Moscow, Gone Girl. I don't think there were any Jonathan Safran Foer books, but my favorite is Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. The Night Circus. There just really wasn't a lot of genre style fiction or even kind of genre mashup fiction. There was a lot of realistic fiction, which is fine. I think probably a lot of that stuff is going to be really good, but I do wonder about the accessibility of some of these books. Again, I haven't read a lot of them. One other thing I noticed was that there was a lot of repetition of the authors. We saw a lot of George Saunders, who I actually haven't read, but I think I would probably really enjoy his stuff, so he might go on my list of to read someday. And Elena Ferrante was on there quite a bit. So just an interesting look at kind of what people were reading across the country, a good survey of what people were reading, but it didn't really seem to kind of tap into the populace, into the heart of a larger readership, into this idea that we don't always want to read the big, important literary tomes. So sometimes we want to read a thrilling, edge-of-your-seat mystery novel, or sometimes we want to read a fantasy novel that sweeps us away on a magical, romantic love story that takes place in a night circus. And I think those books can have just as much value, sometimes more, than some of the more award-winning literary style novels. Why do I say more? Because I think sometimes they can reach a wider audience. And I think the more people who are reading, the more people who are learning through fiction and becoming more empathetic and seeing different sides of different stories and different perspectives from different areas of the country, I think that is important. I don't know that books can fix anything, but I think they can start conversations. And I think it's important to start and to have those conversations, even if they're difficult. And I think for readers, it can be a little bit less difficult to have those conversations because we have seen the other side of some of these things. We have seen different perspectives. We've read and felt the emotions of someone who is different from us. So I am not going to go through all 100 books on this list. You're going to have to go to the New York Times and look at the article and go through all the books yourself. But I did want to talk about the books that I have read, and then I wanted to talk about the top 5. So first, let us run down the books that I have read from this list, which is a very disappointing 19 out of 100. That's right. I've only read 19 of the New York Times best books of the 21st century. Definitely failing the grade here. As a reader, I'm getting a big fat F. What was kind of funny is that most of the books that I had read, of the 19, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I own 12 out of the 19 that I've read. I thought I had a couple more, but I guess maybe they ended up being library books, or maybe I gave them away, or maybe I just didn't see them on my shelf. But apparently, I loved these books enough to buy them and keep them. So let me go through the 19 that I have read. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Atonement by Ian McEwan. Still one of my favorites. Kind of want to reread this one again for like the 5th time. Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Sing Unburied Sing by Jessamine Ward, as well as Salvage the Bones by Jessamine Ward, which I think is one that I checked out from the library. I don't have a copy, but I do remember reading that one. The 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin, which was one of my favorite trilogies that I read last year. Absolutely loved this series. When I first picked up this book, I was absolutely lost, had no idea what was happening, but felt very safe in the hands of N.K. Jemisin. And thank goodness I kept going, because it just turned out that this series blew my mind. I think this is a well-deserved science fiction, speculative fiction, fantasy novel in a list full of literary fiction. Then we've got your Chunkster, your Donna Tartt, The Goldfinch. Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. I remember checking it out from the library and reading it and then thinking I needed to get myself my own copy. So I'm going to be on the lookout for that book. Maybe from a used bookstore, or maybe the next time I'm in a small indie shop, I'll be on the lookout for that one. What do we have next? Oh, Nickel and Dimed. Cannot remember the author's name right now. Einbrick or something like that. Put the cover up. This is a book that I listened to with my husband on a road trip to California, and it was a really eye-opening book. Very intriguing read or listen. Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides, and I read this one a long time ago, and I thought I had a copy on my shelf, but apparently it grew legs and walked away. Great Believers by Rebecca Makkai. I really enjoyed this book. I did have a copy, but I had to throw it out because it was not a good copy. It was missing several hundred pages in the middle of the book where it like duplicated pages. I don't want a copy that is unreadable on my shelf. Great Believers is a book I think that I will be on the lookout for as well to bring into my personal library at some point. One that I just finished recently is The Friend by Sigrid Nunez. Sad book. Short, but you know, it'll make you cry, I guess. That's what you want. Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I read this one just a few months ago. Beautiful book. Beautiful. And I was able to go to an author talk because of the Everybody Reads program in Multnomah County. Very interesting to hear her talk about her process, and very inspirational as well. American Marriage by Tiari Jones. I think this copy is signed, actually. Oh, it's not. Why didn't I get this signed? I went to a talk where Tiari was talking to a bunch of local authors, and I do not know why I didn't get my book signed, but I did enjoy this one. Also, she's a very knowledgeable woman in the industry, and I enjoyed hearing her talk about the different paths and the different experiences that she had. Okay, the final book, the 19th book that I have read from this list is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I have read this one several times. I love this book. You know, I actually think I want to read it again because I bought the other 2 books that are part of this like trilogy-ish. They're kind of in the same world, and I kind of want to read this one again before I dive into those 2. So this might be a reread for me sometime this year. So those are the 19 books that I have read from the New York Times list of the best 100 books of the 21st century. I really loved all of those books. There are some that would kind of be more towards the bottom for me if this was my own list, but they are exceptional books. And I would recommend, I think, pretty much every single one of them. But still, it's a little embarrassing that I've only read 19. Let's talk about the top 5 for a second. The top 5 books from this list are The Corrections by Jonathan Franzen. That's number 5. Number 4 is The Known World by Edward P. Jones. Number 3 is Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. Number 4 is The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. That is the only nonfiction book on the top 5. And the book that took the top spot is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I've heard people talk about this book a lot over the past few years. It is one of those books that I never got around to reading, and I think that maybe now is my chance. Maybe now is the time for me to finally pick up My Brilliant Friend. It's also a TV show, so maybe a little reading, a little watching. Here's the thing. Several of those books on that list are very thick. I think almost all of those 5. I don't know how long The Known World is, but the other 4 I know to be quite large. So there is not going to be a video next week of me reading through the top 5. However, there may be a video in the distant future of me reading the top 5 books from the New York Times Best 100 of the 21st Century. One, because these are books that I've heard a lot about over the past few years and have not read. 2, I've never read a Jonathan Franzen book. I feel like it's time. I feel like I need to read a Jonathan Franzen book. I always kind of complain about him. Maybe it's just time to give the man a chance and see what that book, his biggest book, is all about. It would be a fun video to make, to read these books and determine once and for all if these truly are the best books of the 21st century. As if I am the taste maker. If you have watched any of my Edgar Award winner videos where I try to guess who the winner is going to be for that year, you will know that I am absolutely not a tastemaker. I am absolutely the opposite. I like the opposite of what everyone else is liking. So it could be a fun video to watch me try and read through these top 5 picks. So I want to know your thoughts. What do you think of this list from the New York Times? Do you think that the top 100 books are the best books of the 21st century? What about the top 5? Do you think that they are in their rightful places? Do you think these books epitomize what literature is in the 21st century? How many of these books have you read? I'm hoping that you'll say 2 so that I'll feel better about myself. With 19. But if you've read more, I'm proud of you. I really am. Are there any on this list that you're excited about and want to put on your TBR? Chat with me in the comments. Let's keep this book conversation going. Thank you for watching and thank you for chatting books with me. I'll see you next time.